My name is Julia Garcia. I am 36 years old, and for most of my adult life, I have been the family's emergency fund, their backup plan, the quiet deposit that never bounced and never complained. On paper, my life looks stable, maybe even boring. I work as an IT manager at a logistics company in Columbus, Ohio. The salary is decent, the benefits are predictable, and no one at the office screams at me or begs me for money, which already makes it calmer than my family group chat. With that paycheck, I built something small but steady: a modest house with peeling white paint and a fenced yard, a reliable sedan that starts even on cold mornings, a savings account that grows too slowly to impress anyone but fast enough to keep the panic away at night, and a son named Michael who turned 7 last spring. Michael is everything. He has his father's eyes: soft brown, huge, always watching more than he says. When my husband Daniel died, sudden illness, no warning, no mercy. Michael was 3 years old and too young to remember the details. I remember all of them: the hospital smell, the beep that went flat, the way the world moved on like nothing had happened. Since then, it's been just the two of us. I wake him for school. I pack his lunches. I read him the same stories until the pages start to curl. He falls asleep with his hand fisted around my shirt like he's scared I'll vanish if he lets go. Sometimes I'm scared of that too. To Michael, I am mom and home and safety. To my family, I am something else. To them, I am a function. The fixer. The one who answers the phone at 2:00 in the morning when the car breaks down. The one who quietly wires money before the rent check bounces. The one who says, "Don't worry, I've got it." So often it might as well be my legal name. I understood my role long before I had the words for it. My mother, Anna Garcia, lives in a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. She's been there 11 years. For 9 of those, I have paid her rent. She never asked directly. That would have made it too obvious. Instead, she sighed into the phone every month about how hard things were, how the pension barely covered groceries, how the landlord was raising the rent again. She would say, "I don't know what I'm going to do, Julia," and then grow very quiet. I learned to translate that silence. It meant fix it. So I did. My younger brother, Edward, is 32. He works part-time at a tire shop when he remembers to show up. 3 years ago, his license got suspended. He needed his truck insured under someone else's policy. "Just for a little while," he promised. I added him to mine. The suspension ended. The little while didn't. Every 6 months, the premium comes out of my account. Every 6 months, Edward posts pictures of barbecues and beer on social media and forgets to mention the insurance. My baby sister Jacqueline is 29. She has 2 kids, Justin, age 10, and Rachel, age 6, and a husband, Lawrence, who works construction and always has a story about how the boss screwed him or the weather ruined a job. Their house always needs something: new appliances, roof repairs, emergency plumbing. Jacqueline's salary barely covers the chaos. So 4 years ago, when she complained her phone bill was choking her, I added her line to my plan. It was supposed to be temporary. Like everything else, no one really thanks me. Not in a way that sticks. They acknowledge the payments the way you acknowledge electricity. You don't think about it while it's working, only when it shuts off. I was the middle child, born between Edward's chaos and Jacqueline's charm. Edward got attention by crashing into things: cars, jobs, relationships. Jacqueline floated through childhood on a cloud of dimples and easy smiles, always cute, always sweet, always forgiven. I was the reliable one. The girl who babysat, who got good grades without asking for help, who didn't talk back because it never seemed to change anything. When I was 16, I saved for 2 years to buy a used laptop. Nothing fancy, just enough to write papers and maybe, start stepping into a future that felt different from the one we were stuck in. I was absurdly proud of that laptop. I polished it, tucked it away in its case, and opened it like a secret door to another life. 1 month later, it was gone. My mother sold it to help Edward pay a speeding ticket. She didn't tell me until after. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, and said, "Family comes first, Julia. You'll understand when you're older." I think she expected me to thank her for the lesson. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just felt something small and bright inside me collapse in on itself. I understood even then. I was just too young to call it what it was: sacrifice without consent. That pattern followed me through college, through my marriage, and into widowhood. When Daniel was alive, he saw it clearly in a way I couldn't. Your family treats you like a vending machine, he told me once when I hung up after yet another "I don't know what I'm going to do" call from my mother. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the truth of it hurt too much. After he died, the phone calls didn't stop. They multiplied, and I didn't know who I was without someone to take care of, so I leaned harder into the role. If I couldn't save my husband, maybe I could save everyone else. Providing for them gave me purpose. Being needed felt almost like being loved. Then Michael started getting older, and everything shifted. Watching him grow, listening to his questions, seeing the world through those huge, careful eyes, it did something to me. He'd ask why Grandma never visited unless she needed something, why Uncle Edward always forgot to pay me back, why Aunt Jacqueline yelled at Justin but never followed through. I didn't have answers I liked. I just knew one thing with a ferocity that scared me. I didn't want my son to inherit this role. I didn't want him to learn that love means bleeding yourself dry so other people don't have to change. I wanted to set boundaries, but wanting and doing are not the same. So I kept going, month after month, transfer after transfer, invisible sacrifice stacked on invisible sacrifice. Until the barbecue, until the cupcake, until 10 seconds in a sunburned courtyard showed me exactly what my family thought of me and what they thought of my son. It was the 4th of July. My mother's apartment complex has this shared courtyard with rusted grills and splintered picnic tables. Every year, we gather there, like some kind of tradition we're all a little tired of, but too stubborn to quit. I loaded the trunk that morning like I always do. Cooler full of drinks, 3 bags of groceries, a tray of chocolate cupcakes with vanilla frosting that I'd ordered from the bakery because Michael had seen the picture in the window and whispered, "Those look like clouds you can eat." He'd been talking about them all week. When we pulled into the parking lot, Michael squeezed my hand from the back seat. "Will Justin be nice this time?" he asked. The question sliced clean through my chest. He said it casually, like he was asking about the weather, but his eyes were already braced for no. "Of course he'll be nice," I lied, because what else was I supposed to say? "And if he's not, you come straight to me, okay?" Michael nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. He's 7. He already understands that in our family, some kids are allowed to be mean and some kids are expected to endure it. We walked into the courtyard. Edward stood at the grill, flipping burgers like he was hosting a cooking show. Jacqueline fluttered around the tables, arranging plates. Justin and the other kids ran circles around her, loud and wild. My mother sat in a faded lawn chair in the shade, watching everything with that heavy, assessing stare she has, like a queen over a kingdom she never learned how to rule. I set the cooler down by the table. "Hey, Mom," I said. She looked up. Her expression didn't change. "You're late," she replied. The charcoal almost burned out. No hello, no how are you, no hug for Michael. Michael shuffled closer to my leg, half hiding behind me. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. I took my place like I always do, hovering near the edges, refilling drinks, collecting trash, making myself useful. That's my unofficial title at these gatherings. Julia, who makes herself useful. Michael sat at the end of a bench, watching the other kids toss a football around. No one invited him to play. Twice he stood up, like he might join them, and twice he sat back down. I told myself I was imagining it, that kids are just awkward, that it wasn't personal. The lie tasted like aluminum on my tongue. After we ate, I brought out the tray of cupcakes and set it carefully in the middle of the table. "Okay, bud," I told Michael. "You waited all day. Go pick your favorite." His whole face lit up. It was like watching the sunrise. He walked to the table, moving slowly, scanning each swirl of frosting like it mattered more than anything in the world. He finally chose one near the edge. Chocolate base, perfect tower of vanilla frosting. He lifted it with both hands, gentle and reverent. That's when Justin appeared. He stepped in front of Michael, blocking his path. His friends crowded behind him like a little audience, sensing a show. Justin looked down at the cupcake, then at Michael. A slow, mean smile crawled across his face. "That looks really good," he said. "You gonna share or what?" Michael's fingers tightened around the cupcake. And before I could move, before I could even call his name, Justin tilted his head, looking down at Michael like a cat studying a cornered mouse. "That looks really good," he repeated. "You gonna share or what?" Michael's fingers tightened around the cupcake. He shook his head, barely. "It's mine," he whispered. Justin's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Wow, rude," he said, loud enough for the nearby adults to hear if they were actually listening. "Grandma always says we should share. Don't you want to be a good kid?" Michael tried to sidestep him, his shoulders curling in like he could make himself smaller and disappear. Justin stepped in front of him again. I was already moving, my stomach dropping, my pulse pounding in my ears. The distance between us felt like a mile. "Justin!" I called, trying to keep my voice light. "Hey, knock it!" He slapped the cupcake out of Michael's hands. It happened fast and in slow motion at the same time. The cupcake flew, spun once, and hit the concrete with a wet smack. Frosting exploded into a smeared white mess. The chocolate base crumbled, flattening into the dirt and gravel. Michael froze. For half a second, he just stared at the ruin on the ground. Then his lower lip trembled. His chest hitched. Tears filled his eyes so quickly they spilled over before he could blink them back. Justin laughed. He leaned in close to Michael's face, his voice sharp and loud and triumphant. "Lick it off the floor," he said. "That's where it belongs now." The world narrowed around those words. I reached them in 3 strides. "Hey!" The word tore out of me, too loud, too late. I scooped Michael into my arms. His whole body shook as he buried his face in my shoulder, trying to muffle his sobs. He clung to me like he was drowning, and I was the only piece of wreckage left. I turned around. Everyone had seen. Edward stood frozen at the grill, spatula suspended. Jacqueline's hand was over her mouth. Lawrence's shoulders jerked with a quick chuckle he tried to disguise as a cough. My mother sat in her lawn chair, eyes narrowed, expression unreadable. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was Michael's broken breathing against my neck and Justin's snicker fading into an eye roll. Are you serious?" I managed. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, thin and too calm. "You all just watched that?" Silence. 10 seconds, maybe 15. Long enough for someone to step in, to say, "Justin, apologize." To say, "Michael, I'm so sorry." To say anything. Jacqueline finally broke it. "Oh, come on, Julia," she said, dropping her hand, visibly annoyed. "Boys will be boys. It's literally just a cupcake." "Just a cupcake." Edward shrugged, turning back to the grill like this was mildly inconvenient background noise. "Yeah," he said. "Michael needs to toughen up a little. He's too sensitive." Michael flinched at his name. I felt it in his muscles, a tiny recoil. My mother sighed deeply, like she'd been personally burdened by my existence for years. "You're making a scene," she said. "Put him down, get him another cupcake, and stop with the drama. Everyone's trying to enjoy themselves." I looked at Justin. He stood with his arms crossed, smirking, completely unbothered. No fear, no guilt. Why would he feel guilty? No one had ever taught him to. Heat flooded my face. My hands shook around Michael's small body. "In what universe," I asked quietly, "is it normal to tell a 7-year-old to lick his food off the ground?" My mother's expression didn't change. "In the universe where you don't blow everything out of proportion," she snapped. "You always do this, Julia. Always." That word caught in my throat. "Overreacting," Jacqueline added with a little laugh. "Like always. It's not that deep." I looked around the courtyard. The cheap plastic tablecloths, the sagging balloons, the kids running around like nothing had happened. My own family staring back at me like I was the embarrassment. Something inside me shifted. Not snapped, not broke, just clicked into place. Like a puzzle piece I'd been forcing into the wrong space finally found where it was meant to go. "Okay," I said. My voice was calm. Scary calm. The kind of calm that made even Edward flick his eyes toward me for a split second. "We're leaving." Jacqueline rolled her eyes. "Julia, don't start I'm not starting anything," I said. "I'm finishing." I turned and walked toward the parking lot without waiting for anyone's approval. Michael's arms locked around my neck. I didn't look back, but in the reflection of a car window, I saw them already shifting their focus back to the grill, the conversation, the party. By the time I strapped Michael into his booster seat, his tears had slowed to hiccups. His eyelashes were clumped together, his cheeks blotchy and red. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked, his voice tiny. My chest hurt, physically hurt. "No," I said, crouching so we were eye level. "You did absolutely nothing wrong." He sniffled. "Then why was Justin so mean?" A dozen answers fought to the surface. Because no one stops him. Because your grandma praises him and ignores you. Because his parents laugh when he hurts other people. Because this family only respects loudness, never kindness. "I don't know," I said, because I refused to lie again. "But I promise you, it's not because of you." He nodded slowly, but I could tell the words were bouncing off a bruise that went deeper than my reassurance could reach. We drove home in silence. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun was still high. It was barely 6 o'clock. I gave Michael a bath, washed the dirt and frosting off his hands, helped him into soft pajamas, and let him watch cartoons on the couch. He curled up, thumb near his mouth, eyes drooping. Halfway through the second episode, he fell asleep against my arm. I carried him to bed, tucked him in, and sat there longer than I needed to, watching his chest rise and fall. In sleep, his face smoothed back into the softness of a much younger child. No humiliation, no forced bravery. Just my baby. My phone buzzed in the kitchen. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "I've got you. I promise." Then I turned off the light and closed his door almost all the way, leaving a sliver of hallway glow. In the dark kitchen, the phone lit up the counter. Family group chat. Of course. I opened it. My mother's message filled the screen. No greeting, no punctuation beyond what was necessary. "We are done with your attitude. What you did today was embarrassing. If you can't handle a simple family gathering without making everyone uncomfortable, then stay away. You're not welcome until you learn to stop being so sensitive." Below it, a little heart reaction from Edward. A thumbs up emoji from Jacqueline. I stared at the screen, feeling each word settle on my skin like wet concrete, heavy and cold and binding. Not welcome. Stay away. I scrolled up through the chat. Months and months of messages rolled past. Photos of Justin's soccer trophies, Rachel in a sparkly dance costume, Edward's truck, my mother's complaints about rent, Jacqueline's hints about bills, Edward's "Can you spot me until Friday?" texts that never mentioned paying me back. And me. "Yes, I paid it. I sent the transfer. Don't worry, I'll cover it. No problem." I saw my own name over and over, always attached to a solution, never to celebration. No birthday messages for me that didn't come 3 days late. No, "How are you holding up?" After Daniel died, that wasn't quickly followed by the way." I was a bank transaction with a first name. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs, but my mind was clear. I typed slowly, each word like laying down a brick. "I understand. If you're done with my attitude, I'm done too. Every bill ends tomorrow." I read it twice. It looked small on the screen, not nearly big enough to hold the weight of what I was saying. Then I hit send. 3 dots appeared almost instantly as someone started typing. I flipped the phone face down on the table before the reply could come through. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I was suddenly acutely aware of the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock on the wall, the hollow ache between my ribs. I walked down the hallway to Michael's room. He was still asleep, tangled in his blanket, hair sticking up in a cowlick. His hand reached across the empty space beside him like he'd been searching for someone in his dreams. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Something had always kept me tethered to my family, no matter how carelessly they pulled on that tether. Guilt. Obligation. The old belief that letting them struggle was the same as pushing them. But when Justin told my son to lick his food off the ground, and my mother told me I was the problem, something snapped clean through that rope. They didn't just dismiss me this time. They dismissed him, and that I would not allow. "I will protect you," I whispered into the quiet room. "From them, if I have to, even from the idea of them." Back in the kitchen, I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank spreadsheet. If I was going to end every bill, I wanted to see the whole picture, all of it, every dollar stretched, every sacrifice folded into a bill no one ever bothered to read. I typed the first header, Mom, rent. Then another, Edward, insurance. Then Jacqueline, phone. Row after row, I started filling in dates and amounts, my fingers moving faster as memory after memory surfaced. Years of "just this once," years of "I'll pay you back," years of "family comes first," used as a knife instead of a hug. The numbers would come later. Tonight, the act of listing them was enough. The proof of my own generosity staring back at me in black and white. My phone buzzed again and again on the table, lighting the edge of my vision. I didn't flip it over. I stared at the spreadsheet, at the growing list of sacrifices no one had seen but me. In the silence of my little kitchen, with my son finally sleeping peacefully down the hall, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, though that would come. Clarity. Tomorrow I would start pulling plugs. And for once in my life, I wouldn't apologize for it. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. After finishing the first draft of the spreadsheet, I sat there staring at it, feeling decades of invisible weight shifting on my shoulders. I kept thinking of Michael's face, his blotchy cheeks, the way he'd tried so hard not to cry. I kept replaying Justin's voice, that ugly command. Lick it off the floor. By 2 a.m., I had added up the numbers. $153,000. I reread it 3 times, not because I wasn't sure, but because I needed to feel the shock fully. Seeing the number, the size of a house down payment, a college fund, a life raft, made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. 9 years of rent, 3 years of car insurance, 4 years of phone bills, hundreds of emergency transfers, thousands in holidays, graduations, gifts, medical bills, repairs. And not one of them, not my mother, not Edward, not Jacqueline, had lifted a finger to defend my son when a child humiliated him for fun. By 3 a.m., I had a plan. I started with the easiest thing, my mother's rent. I logged into my bank account, navigated to automatic transfers. The cursor blinked next to the line labeled Recurring Payment. Anna Garcia. Rent. $1,200. I hovered for a long moment. Then I hit cancel. A message popped up. Are you sure? Yes. The next screen asked me to confirm. This action will stop future payments. Yes. The window closed. The transfer disappeared from the list. I exhaled like I had been underwater for years. Next, I called the after-hours line for my insurance company. A robotic voice chirped its way through options until I reached policy management. I followed the steps, keyed in the information, and removed Edward's truck from my policy. Effective immediately, the robotic voice said. Good. Then I logged into my phone account. Jacqueline's number was under the family plan I'd opened years ago, back when her phone kept shutting off and she'd cried about needing it for the kids. There was a little red icon next to schedule change. I clicked it, selected her number, selected remove from plan, selected effective tomorrow. 3 clicks. 4 years undone in less than a minute. I moved through everything systematically, almost clinically. Removed my mother as an authorized user on my credit card. Changed passwords to streaming accounts that Edward used more than I did. Revoked access to grocery delivery services Jacqueline logged into occasionally. Closed a shared digital wallet Edward always forgot to refill. By dawn, the entire financial web I had built around them, this quiet, suffocating structure of support, was gone. 6 hours of clicking, typing, confirming, deleting. 9 years dismantled. The sunrise crept through the kitchen window in ribbons of pale gold. My back ached. My eyes burned. But the tightness in my chest, the one I'd forgotten was there, felt looser than it had in years. At 8 a.m., I finally made coffee. Not because I needed the caffeine, I was running on adrenaline, but because the ritual calmed me. After a few sips, I went to wake Michael. He blinked up at me from his pillow, groggy but peaceful. Is today going to be better? He asked. God, that question. I brushed his hair back. Yes, I said. Today is going to be much better. Michael got dressed in his favorite blue t-shirt and mismatched socks. He ate pancakes with messy enthusiasm, syrup on his chin. The normalcy of it made my throat ache. Can we go to the park? He asked. Yes, I said immediately. Anything you want. We spent the morning at a small, quiet park tucked behind the library. Michael swung so high the chains squeaked. He climbed the jungle gym. He chased squirrels that were faster than him. The sun warmed the bench where I sat, and for a while I let myself breathe. Around noon, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Then again, and again. I finally pulled it out. Group chat. 12 new messages. Edward had sent the first. My insurance company just called. Why is the truck off your policy? What did you do? Then my mother. Julia, what is going on? The rent didn't go through. You better fix this. This isn't funny. Then Jacqueline. My phone service just got suspended? Are you serious? I can't make calls, Julia. I have kids. More messages flew in, turning from confusion to anger within minutes. Julia, answer us. What are you doing? You're being childish. This is petty. You're punishing everyone over one cupcake. I watched the screen for a moment without expression. The phone vibrated again. Another dozen messages appeared, each one more frantic than the last. Michael ran over, breathless, hair flying. Mom, can I have a snack? I locked the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. Of course, I said, pulling out a granola bar. Go play. He ran back to the slide, crumbs already on his shirt. I turned my phone off. Just off. No buzzing, no guilt. Just the wind, the birds, and the sound of Michael laughing as he tried to jump from the second step of the jungle gym. 3 days later, my mother showed up unannounced. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when the doorbell rang. Michael was in his room building a Lego house with uneven walls and no roof. Stay here, honey, I told him. I'll be right back. Through the peephole, I saw her, my mother, standing rigidly on the porch, arms crossed, chin lifted. Behind her, Edward's truck idled in the street. I opened the door, but blocked the entry with my body. "We need to talk," she said immediately, her voice clipped. "About what?" I asked. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't play dumb. You know exactly what." I waited. "This has gone far enough," she said. "You need to stop this nonsense. You're being childish and vindictive and—" "What is it," I asked calmly, that you think I need to stop? She blinked, taken aback by my tone. Then she stepped forward. "The rent," she snapped. "Edward's insurance. Jacqueline's phone. All of it. You think you can just cut everyone off because you threw a tantrum?" I didn't respond. I just looked at her. Really looked. My mother, who had always expected me to fix things. My mother, who had sold my one treasured possession without apology. My mother, who watched her grandson get bullied and shrugged it off like spilled water. Her face tightened at my silence. "You're punishing us over a little incident," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Boys will be boys. Michael needs to learn to handle himself." Heat rose into my skull. "He's 7, I said. "So what?" she shot back. "You can't protect him from everything. This is ridiculous. Just restart the payments while we figure this out." There it was. Not apology, not insight, not remorse. Negotiation. "Mom," I said quietly, "you told me to stay away." She flinched. "You said I wasn't welcome." "That was out of anger," she said quickly. "You know I didn't mean it." "But you meant it when you liked Justin's behavior," I said. "You meant it when you told me I was making a scene." Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I kept going. "You didn't defend him," I said. "Not once. Not you. Not Edward. Not Jacqueline. You all stood there and let it happen." Her face hardened. She chose anger again, her most familiar weapon. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "You'll regret this. When you come crawling back, don't expect us to forgive you." I stepped back into my home. "Goodbye, Mom," and I closed the door. Edward revved the engine, and the truck roared away. I watched from the entryway window as they disappeared. I waited for guilt, for doubt, for that old ache of responsibility. Nothing came, only a strange, steady quiet. Over the next week, I compiled everything. Every receipt, every transfer confirmation, every bill, every text message begging for help. I printed them, organized them in folders, labeled each section with dates and names. Not because I planned on showing anyone, because I needed to see it, to remember it, to never fall for the trap again. And while I organized the truth of the last 9 years, the consequences rolled in. Late rent notices, threats of eviction, Edward losing his job after 2 late shifts, Jacqueline explaining her disconnected phone to coworkers with red cheeks and half-truths. Not one of them apologized. Not one of them asked how Michael was doing. Not one of them acknowledged the Cupcake incident. By the end of the second week, there were banging fists on my door, angry voicemails, emotional manipulation, long messages about family and betrayal. By midnight one night, my phone showed 58 missed calls. I didn't return any of them. Instead, I sat on the back porch with Michael. We watched fireflies blinking in the dusk, lighting up the yard like tiny lanterns. He giggled every time one flew close to his hand. In that moment, quiet, gentle, free, I knew I had done the right thing. Not for myself, for him. The week after I closed the door on my mother felt like standing on a shoreline, watching a storm tear through a city I no longer lived in. I could see the destruction. I could feel the vibrations of panic. But I was safe on my own solid ground for the first time in my life. And the storm was only beginning. I built a red folder. They built chaos. On Monday morning, I started organizing the evidence. Not because I planned to confront them with it. Not because I wanted revenge. Not even because I needed validation. I did it for one reason. To make my invisible labor visible to myself. I spread papers across the dining table. Highlighted rent transfers. Screenshots of group chats. Photos of checks I had written. Insurance statements. Notes from emergencies I had cleaned up. I printed the 9-year spreadsheet, page after page, until it looked like a slim novel. I bought a red cardstock folder from a dollar store 2 towns over. I labeled the tabs neatly. Mom, rent Edward, insurance Jacqueline, phone additional expenses, messages, plus chat logs. It was strangely therapeutic, filing every unspoken sacrifice into a place where it finally mattered. While I placed receipts in order, their chaos rolled in from every direction. Eviction notice, day 10. Anna's landlord didn't waste time. By the 10th day without rent, she received an official late notice. By day 15, she was served a warning. She called me 17 times that week. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she screamed. Sometimes she threatened to cut me off from the family, as if that wasn't what she'd already done. The 17th call came from a number I didn't recognize. I accidentally answered. Her voice trembled with fury and desperation. Julia, he's going to evict me. Do you understand that? I raised you. I gave you everything. A bitter, sharp irony almost made me laugh. She had given me nothing but responsibility. I'm sorry you're in this position, I said calmly, but I'm not fixing it. You're abandoning your own mother. Did you abandon your grandson when Justin humiliated him? Silence. Then a sharp inhale. You can't compare the two. I just did. And I hung up. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Edward. Unemployment. Day 14. 2 days later, I heard from a coworker that Edward had lost his job. Not directly because of the insurance cancellation, but because he'd been late twice in 1 week. He blamed the lack of reliable transportation. His supervisor, who'd apparently been looking for a reason for months, finally had one. Edward's messages to me were explosive. You ruined my life. You got me fired. I hope you're happy. You're dead to me. I muted the thread. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty. I felt done. Jacqueline. Social fallout. Day 20. Jacqueline was the one who cracked the fastest. Her phone service suspension had become neighborhood gossip. She had to borrow Lawrence's phone for days, explaining to coworkers why her carrier messed everything up. Some believed her. Some didn't. Lawrence began asking questions, loud ones. Why did Julia cut you off? What aren't you telling me? Why do you expect her to pay your bills? Arguments spilled out of their house and onto the street. From a friend of a friend, I heard that Justin had been acting out in school. Behavioral incidents. Complaints. Jacqueline blamed stress from the phone situation. I said nothing. Not out of cruelty, but because it was no longer my job to fix broken systems I didn't create. They tried showing up. On a Wednesday afternoon, Edward and Jacqueline arrived together, marching up my driveway like an angry delegation. I saw them through the blinds but stayed silent. Edward pounded on the door. Julia, come out here. Stop hiding like a coward. Jacqueline chimed in. We deserve an explanation. You can't just abandon your family. I leaned against the wall, listening to their accusations echo through the wood. They shouted for 5 minutes. Then 3. Then 1. Eventually, they left. I didn't watch them go. The voicemails changed tone. By the following week, the messages softened. Not because they understood, but because their fear outweighed their pride. My mother left long, rambling voicemails filled with emotional hooks. Your father would be ashamed if he saw you doing this. You're tearing the family apart. I have nowhere to go. You're not really this heartless. Edward sent 3-word daggers. Call me back. Jacqueline wrote paragraphs about the children. Justin didn't mean to be mean. You can't punish all of us over one moment. I need my phone for the kids. Don't do this to your niece and nephew. Not once did she mention what happened to Michael. Not once did she apologize. Not once did any of them ask about him. That told me everything. Meanwhile, Michael was flourishing. I watched him build Lego castles. I watched him draw dinosaurs. I watched him run across the yard chasing fireflies, laughing loud and bright. Day by day, the shadow behind his eyes lifted. He didn't ask about Justin anymore. He didn't mention the cupcake. He didn't flinch at loud voices the way he used to. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching lightning bugs blink across the grass, he leaned against my arm and said, I like when it's just us. My throat tightened. I do too, I whispered. He nodded, satisfied, and tried to catch a firefly with both hands. The letter arrived. Day 30. A plain envelope, no return address. Inside, one handwritten letter from my mother. The handwriting was stiff, angry, the same style she used on fridge notes when I was a kid. She wrote that I had destroyed the family, that I was selfish, that I was cruel, that my father would be ashamed, that everything falling apart was my fault, that she hoped I realized what I'd done before it was too late. I read it once, folded it, placed it into the red folder under messages plus chat logs, then closed it, softly, deliberately, like burying something. A month of silence. For the first time in years, decades, my phone was quiet. My mind was quiet. My home was peaceful. I listened to Michael breathe in his sleep. I listened to birds outside the window. I listened to nothing, and it felt like everything I had ever wanted. The storm in my family kept raging. But I had walked out of the city, and finally, I was free. Fall crept in slowly, in soft gold light and chilly mornings. By then, the calls had stopped. The messages had stopped. The anger had burned itself out on their side of the line. What was left was silence, clean and wide open silence. and I was ready for a fresh start. Moving out, moving on. Selling the house in Columbus wasn't a hard decision. Every room held a memory of exhaustion I didn't want anymore. Michael and I packed our things in quiet, peaceful bursts: books, toys, clothes, and the red folder tucked carefully into a box labeled private. We moved to a smaller town an hour away, a place with tree-lined sidewalks and neighbors who waved without expecting anything in return. Our new house wasn't fancy, but it felt like a deep breath. The yard was wide and a little wild. The kitchen had sunlight. The air smelled like pine instead of stress. Michael walked into his new school on a Wednesday morning, gripping my hand hard at first. But when he saw the colorful murals on the hallway walls and a teacher with warm eyes kneeling to greet him, his shoulders eased. That first afternoon, he came home chattering about two boys who asked if he wanted to sit with them at lunch. His face glowed. I hadn't seen him that open, that unguarded, in a long time. I let myself cry later in the shower where he wouldn't hear me. Building a life with room to breathe. I transitioned into remote consulting work. Same field, better pay, far less stress. Without my family's demands, my bank account stopped bleeding. I also started therapy. I wasn't broken. I was unlearning. My therapist helped me find the words I never had growing up. Boundaries, self-worth, emotional labor, conditional love. She helped me recognize how quiet obedience became my survival pattern, how guilt was used like a leash, how family had been a shield for exploitation. Little by little, I rebuilt myself. Some days were harder than others. Trauma doesn't leave just because the people who caused it aren't around. But Michael's laughter in our living room, the smell of our little garden, the mornings waking up without anxiety, these things stitched me back together. We planted tomatoes and herbs in the yard. Michael watered them every morning before school, humming softly to himself like he was singing to the plants. When the first tomato ripened, he held it like a treasure. "Look, Mom," he said, "I grew it." "You did," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "You really did." I wasn't just watching my son flourish. I was watching myself. Enter David, the good kind of complicated. I started seeing him before I admitted to myself that I was seeing him. David Turner, 39, divorced, father of an 8-year-old girl named Lily. We first crossed paths at the community center where Michael took his art classes. He was there picking up Lily from violin lessons. He had kind eyes, tired but kind, and a smile that was a little crooked, a little shy. He held the door open for me the first time we met. "You're new around here," he said gently, not as a question, but an observation. "Is it that obvious?" I laughed. "You look like you're still trying to map the grocery aisles in your head." I blinked and then laughed harder than I meant to. He was right. He ran a small IT contracting business, technically savvy but comically disorganized, which gave me an excuse to help him once or twice with invoices or software settings. Not because he asked, because it felt good to help someone who didn't treat help like oxygen. We talked a little each week, casual things at first, the weather, the town, our kids. Then one evening, as the kids worked on a collaborative painting, he sat next to me on the bench outside the classroom. "You seem lighter lately," he said. "Happier." Something inside me thawed at the sincerity in his voice. "Maybe I am," I admitted. David didn't intrude. He didn't ask for details. He didn't push for a story I wasn't ready to share. He just nodded. "Good," he said. "You deserve that." I wasn't used to kindness without expectation. It made me cautious at first. But slowly, so slowly it surprised me, it became something I looked forward to. A steady presence, a warm smile, a quiet way of caring. He wasn't perfect, but he was real and gentle and patient. Melissa, the ex who wasn't a threat. David's ex-girlfriend, Melissa, was part of his life in a natural, complicated, but healthy way. They co-parented Lily with maturity. No dramatics, no venom, no shadowy tension lurking in corners. Melissa wasn't a rival. She wasn't an antagonist. She was just a woman trying to raise her daughter well. The first time we met, she shook my hand warmly. "David speaks highly of you," she said. "Both of you, actually. You and Michael." No raised eyebrows, no passive-aggressive tone, no ulterior motive. Just polite sincerity. It was startling. In my old life, every relationship was a battlefield of expectations. Here, things were complicated, but not toxic. Twisted, but not sharp. I found myself breathing easier, smiling more, letting myself imagine a life where love didn't cost pieces of me. Firelight and the new normal. The first time David had dinner with us, it was simple, pasta and garlic bread. Michael wore his favorite shirt with the dinosaurs. David brought Lily, who was painfully shy until Michael showed her his art supplies. By dessert, the kids were laughing. By the time they left, my chest felt warm instead of tight. Later, after Michael fell asleep, I stepped into the backyard. The sky was dark, the air cool, the yard dotted with blinking fireflies. David texted, "I had a really nice time. Thank you, Julia." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Me too. Really. It was the truth. But more than that, it was hope. The messy, imperfect, beautiful start of something new. Something healthy. Something mine. For the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't just rebuilding. I was living again. October arrived with crisp air, long shadows, and the soft glow of a life finally settling into place. Michael was thriving. I was breathing. David was slowly, gently, becoming part of our world. And then, on a quiet Friday afternoon, the past found its final way to my doorstep. The last letter. I almost didn't check the mailbox that day. It was cold, and I was rushing to get Michael to his art class. But something made me flip through the envelopes. One plain white envelope. No return address. My stomach tightened. I knew. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, handwritten in my mother's unmistakable, sharp, tight script. The words were exactly what I expected, and somehow still heavy. You destroyed this family. You abandoned me. You are selfish. Everything falling apart is your fault. Your father would be ashamed if he could see you now. I hope you realize what you've done before it's too late. I read it once. There was no apology, not even a hint of accountability, only blame, manipulation, and the same old hooks she'd used to pull me along my entire life. But this time, they didn't catch. I folded the letter carefully, walked inside, opened the red folder, slid the letter into the back pocket labeled Family Messages, Final. Closed it, and felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not sorrow, not nostalgia. Just completion, like closing the last page of a book I never wanted to read again. An unsent letter of my own. That evening, after Michael fell asleep and the house was wrapped in quiet, I opened my laptop and began typing. Not to send, but to understand myself. I wrote about being 16 and watching my laptop disappear to fund Edward's mistake. I wrote about every rent payment, every insurance premium, every phone bill, every emergency transfer made in silence. I wrote about the 4th of July barbecue, the cupcake exploding on the concrete, Michael's tears, Justin's cruelty, my family's laughter, silence, and dismissal. I wrote about the text that told me I wasn't welcome, the 58 missed calls, the eviction notice, the job loss, the chaos that wasn't mine anymore. I wrote, I did not destroy this family. I simply stopped carrying it. When I finished, I saved the document and closed the laptop. The weight I'd carried for decades, the guilt, the fear, the obligation, slipped off my shoulders like a coat I didn't need anymore. David's question. 2 nights later, after an early dinner with the kids, David lingered on the porch as Michael and Lily ran after fireflies in the yard. Julia, he said softly, leaning on the railing beside me, can I ask you something? His tone was careful, respectful. Yes, I said. When you look at your old life, do you miss any of it? I thought about my mother, my siblings, the constant demands disguised as love, the way love was always conditional, always taken for granted, always something I had to prove through sacrifice. I thought about the cupcake. No, I said, not even a little. David nodded like he understood the answer wasn't simple, but it was honest. I'm glad you're here, he said. I felt a warmth bloom in my chest, a quiet, steady warmth I wasn't used to. I am too, I said. Michael's moment. Michael ran toward us, cupping something gently in both hands. Mom, look! His eyes were glowing. I knelt. He opened his hands slightly. A firefly blinked inside the small cave of his palms, tiny and bright. Be careful, I whispered. Don't squish him. I'm not, Michael said seriously. I'm keeping him safe. Safe. A simple word that hit me like a wave. I brushed his hair back and kissed his forehead. That's very kind, I said. He grinned and released the firefly into the air. It spiraled upward, blinking, then vanished into the night. Michael ran off to chase another, the cupcake that freed us. I stood there watching him, the cool October breeze lifting my hair, fireflies blinking across the yard like drifting stars. And it hit me. That cupcake, the one splattered on the concrete, the one Justin mocked him for, had changed everything. Justin meant to humiliate him. Instead, he liberated us. Not immediately, not painlessly, but completely. Because that was the moment I finally saw the truth. The moment I finally chose my child over their expectations. The moment I walked away. The moment I rebuilt us. The moment we both became free. The ending. I never knew I deserved. Michael's laughter filled the yard, clear, bright, unscarred. David leaned beside me, quiet and steady, like he'd always known I needed space to heal before anything else. The house behind us glowed warm. The garden Michael watered every morning rustled softly. The night sky shimmered with blinking fireflies. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I believed, deeply, truly, that life could be beautiful. Not because I earned it, not because I paid for it, not because someone allowed it, but because I chose it. For me, for my son, for the family we were building. Small, imperfect, but real. That was enough. That was everything.